Why is the cost lower down there? Well, it's because the bid engine can be selective. So if there's 1 million impressions and you only need 10,000 to hit your target, then you're a percent of the auction essentially. Google can be very selective with their automated bidding, and it can drop you in and out and essentially cherry pick for you. Hey, I'm Ed. So if you've ever had trouble scaling Google Ads, then it's probably one of these things. And have you ever asked yourself, why, when I spend more on a converting keyword, does performance drop? Or do I not get more conversions? It was converting before. Why, when I find converting search terms and I add them as positive keywords, do they not perform anymore? They don't convert. Or they might convert, but the cost conversion's sky high. And then puts you in a position where if your client or your boss asks you for forecasts, then you sit there going, what the fuck am I meant to do? Well, let's work through that, answer these things. So I've never seen people visualize the auction like this, so I'm going to try and explain it through some beautiful visuals that I put together myself. So the situation of spending more. Let's consider smart bidding. So you've set a target ROAS or a CPA, or perhaps you're using max conversions, whatever it may be. When we're looking at an account, particularly over a period of time, what we see is the smoothed average cost conversion. But when in reality, if you look at individual conversion costs, they are up, down, zigzagging all over the place. And a lot of people forget about this. And this is where some of the problem starts. This zigzagging is a product of the search market. So how many people are out there physically looking for the thing that you're advertising, and of course your competitors, how they impact the auction, neither of which you can really control. And this is part one of the problem. That's why sometimes bidding more doesn't have the impact, or spending more doesn't have the impact that you desire, and that's why things are very chaotic. You might even have situations where you up the bid and budget and you don't get more impressions, or you get more clicks but you don't get the conversions coming through. And you sat there going, well, why? I've literally doubled my budget and my impressions have done nothing. That's because the auction isn't linear. So as you can see with my beautiful visual, there essentially is a sweet spot, which is a moving target, just to make things harder. And this moving target is dramatically different depending on the market. If you're operating in a local area, so say you're doing plumbing services advertising, typically the target is less dynamic, should we say, and the auction remains quite stable. However, for wider markets, I mean, if we think of something rather large like finance, then the auction is and can be very volatile. And particularly in the mid to larger markets, the auction is not linear. None of this is linear. This is the thing you've got to remember. So when you bump your budget 10%, you're getting 100 conversions before, you're expecting 10 more. It doesn't always work that way. Unless you're in the sweet spot or the lower easy street of the auction. So essentially, you are nibbling around the lower regions of impressions and therefore cost. Now, why is the cost lower down there? Well, it's because the bid engine can be selective. So if there's 1 million impressions and you only need 10,000 to hit your target being your budget divided by conversions, so your CPA, or your ROAS target, or your maximized conversion target based on your budget. So if you can only spend £100 a day or dollars, whatever, it doesn't matter, and that only grants you about 10,000 impressions, then you're a percent of the auction essentially, which means that Google can be very selective with their automated bidding, and it can drop you in and out and essentially cherry pick for you. I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you're at the bottom 20% of the market in terms of impressions available, it's very, very easy to have success in advertising, and it is. At the top 20%, it's much harder because there is no cherry picking. You are literally, when you're at the maximum of the available impressions, the maximum of the available market, you are literally saying to Google through the bidding system, I want to be there every single time. Doesn't matter if it's inefficient or if that person's not right for me. And this is where you can find that inflection point for many accounts where you might want 100% impression share. You might have the budget for it, but you start to get over the 70%, 80%, 90% impression share range, and your cost conversion goes through the roof, or your ROAS just tanks. And there might be a couple more conversions up there, but they simply aren't efficient. They simply aren't worth the spend, unless you're a big advertiser where volume is the concern and it's an aggressive approach. But most advertisers aren't able to literally pay whatever for a conversion. Again, we're dealing with a very chaotic thing. Human beings, for a start, who do whatever they like. And I've tried to visualize that here and explain it to you, and I hope this does help. Just remember, things are not linear, and you will find a sweet spot somewhere in the middle. And as soon as you start encroaching on the higher volumes, that's where spend can go up. It's not true of every single market. There are some markets that do, in industries and niches, that do respond a lot better than others to simply bumping the budget. Now, how do you fix this? So what do you need to do to be able to get past the sweet spot and spend more or get more conversions? Well, from Google's perspective, they want click-through rate. It's as simple as that. And it's never going to change, because at the end of the day, if they put an advert in front of someone, they want the click, because that's how they make the money. So all this fancy stuff about your ad rank, your quality score, your audiences, all this other good stuff, it comes down to click-through rate. It's business sense for Google. So increasing click-through rate is better ad copy, but you know that already, which will show favorability in the auction. Negative keyword management simply cannot be skipped. Even with today's automations, it's non-optional. Negatives, negatives, negatives. The harder way, of course, is to improve or increase your conversion rate, but that's rarely done inside a Google Ads account. Your website's job is to convert people. So that's another way, an incremental gain in conversion rate.